Hey, welcome back to more D&D. My name's Brandon Moore, and today is the third installment of videos all about the buildings in Heroes Haven. If you don't know what Heroes Haven is, go ahead and click this link here where I go in depth about exactly what it is, but essentially it's a campaign that anyone can play with anyone at any time without getting that finished feeling of a one-shot, but rather that continuity that a campaign can give you. So if this sounds interesting to you, now might be a good time to subscribe if you're not already, because like this video, I'm releasing a whole bunch of content all about the town itself, including some of the buildings and their lore, the proprietors, and a whole bunch of other information. So you can get notified anytime I release a new video and then be ready to run this campaign as soon as you can get a bunch of friends involved. Additionally, I release all of the material for Heroes Haven on my Patreon that you can download and have at the ready whenever the time is right. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's building, being the local library, which Craig has dubbed, being one of his guilty pleasures, as Legends, Lore, and Love Stories. So first, let's talk about how Legends, Lore, and Love Stories came to be. You see, as I mentioned in the Town Hall video, Craig grew up in the family business being a publishing company. So, growing up, he had access to all these different books and novels and stories, and fell in love with the art of reading and writing. So when Craig decided to move out and make his own town, he knew that he had to have this beautiful library constructed central to everything, because he believes the library is one of the most important buildings a town can have. And so he did. When he got the chance, he had this extravagant library constructed that when you walk in, you see wall-to-wall bookshelves stuffed full of books and parchments and papers, along with additional bookshelves down the center, tables spread out all throughout the main area, and then on the right side, you'll see a little bit of an arcane, glowing pink color, notating where the love stories can be found. Now, aside from the love stories, most of the remainder of the books and parchments and documents are essentially non-fiction recollections or resources all about Faerun, the monsters, the towns, the areas that Craig believes could help his adventurers in the quest that they'll be completing. Because Craig knows that to have a successful town of adventurers that are completing quests, they need to be as prepared as they can be for whatever it is they're going to be getting into to increase that rate of success. But Craig took it a step further by hiring a man named Andwin Valen. You see, Andwin is an elderly, high-elven male. Picture Maester Aemon from Game of Thrones, but without the blind.
Oh, and minus the human.
Love is the death of duty.
Who spent his younger years traveling all throughout the continent just talking to people and collecting their stories for no reason other than his own interests. Now, along his travels, he eventually ran into Craig as he was constructing the LinkedIn in the town. He got to talking to Craig and asking all about why it was he was making this town and what his plans were, and as he was writing things down, Craig himself started to really enjoy his discussions with Andwin and thought that he would make a perfect addition to his library. So he hired him on the spot.
You're hired.
He promised Andwin that when he finished constructing his library, he could run everything and collect all the stories he wanted till his heart's content. And thus was the beginning of curator Andwin Valen in Legends, Lore, and Love Stories. So now, any characters that go into the library will typically run into Andwin, and he will ask them about maybe any adventures that they've had recently or quests that they've completed, and he'll remember them. He's got a great memory, and then jot them down later that night, filing them away into the library for anyone to access at will. And so this creates this continuous addition of knowledge into the library, having all these recollections of different events that people can access to see what maybe has happened in different areas throughout the continent or around Heroes Haven specifically. Now, outside of the game, I actually use this to help with the continuity of characters themselves. You see, let's say in Session 1, the party made their way north to the Fields of the Dead, and they fought some group of owlbears and something else.
What is that again? Owlbear.
And then made it back and turned in their quest. At some point, they will have talked to Andwin, whether that be during the session or just hypothetically outside of the session, after which Andwin would write down this story and keep it within the library. Then the next session, a new player comes in and it can actually make sense that they may know about the quest that happened because Andwin put the story itself in the library and they could have read it. So it helps kind of eliminate that lack of knowledge that sometimes players have when they weren't part of something. They can essentially just have read it in the library. I actually use the library for more than character continuity though. What I typically use it for is a little bit of a release of knowledge for upcoming quests that the players are looking for. You see, let's say they got a quest to go find an artifact over in Baldur's Gate. What they could do first is stop at the library and roll maybe an investigation check, maybe an advantage if they're getting Andwin's help, looking for any kind of information on either this area in Baldur's Gate, the artifact itself, or anything else that might be involved in the quest. Depending on the investigation check, they might find out exactly what the artifact was in history. They may find out what kind of thieves guilds are involved in the area of Baldur's Gate that they're going to, or maybe they'll find out something that happened to Baldur's Gate recently that they might want to be aware of. This is just how I allow players to kind of gain a little bit of insight into the things that they're going to be doing before they go off on their quests unprepared. And before I close this video out, there's one other thing I want to go over, and that's how I use this library to kind of help with story continuity within Heroes Haven. What I mean by that is, let's say for instance you have a wizard that's maybe around for session 1 and session 2, but they miss maybe 3, 4, 5, and they come back at a later session. It makes sense that that wizard could have been spending all this time in the library, reading, researching, honing in their arcane abilities, so that way when they come back, it makes sense that they're the same level as everybody else. They've been increasing their abilities without actually going out on these quests like everyone else is. It really just helps to keep everyone on the same page without having to be with each other at all times. But rather than just do it and make it not make any sense, this at least helps the story make sense in the background. But that's it. That's everything you need to know about Legends, lore, and love stories. I have the map and some other information all about the library uploaded onto my Patreon that you can go access now. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already, because I've got a whole bunch more content coming out with a bunch more buildings. The next one being Knox Banking and Brokerage, where you can invest in the town, store your own money, or buy some land over in the garden.